Your boss calls you into their office. You take a seat, trying to look calm. "This report looks good," they say, "but I noticed a few mistakes on page 3. And just like that, you stop hearing everything before the word mistakes. The compliment vanishes. All you can feel is the heat rising in your chest. Your heartbeat quickens. Your jaw tightens. A voice in your head starts racing. "I worked so hard on that. It wasn't even my fault." Mark turned in his data late. You want to explain, you want to defend, you want to protect yourself. But protect yourself from what, exactly? From being wrong? Or from being seen as flawed? That sudden rush, that invisible wall that goes up inside you, it isn't logic. It's armor, a reflex you built long ago to survive moments that felt unsafe. And every time someone points out a mistake, you don't just hear feedback, you hear danger, you hear shame, you hear, "You're not good enough." So you fight, or you shut down, or you explain until your voice trembles. But what if this armor that's meant to protect you is also what's been keeping you from growing? Because defensiveness isn't strength. It's fear disguised as protection. So take a deep breath. Let's find out what that fear is really trying to protect. Let's begin. Defensiveness isn't a choice. It's a reflex, an ancient instinct that turns on the moment we sense danger. Not physical danger, but emotional danger. The fear of being wrong, being rejected, being exposed. And when that fear takes over, it often wears one of 4 masks. As you listen, notice which one feels most familiar. The first is the denier. The denier's shield is simple. "That's not true. You misunderstood me." They erase the threat by erasing the accusation. When someone says, "You seemed unprepared," the denier replies, "No, I wasn't. I just didn't expect those questions." It looks like confidence, but underneath is terror, the fear of losing control over how they're perceived. Denial is not arrogance, it's protection. Because if the mistake doesn't exist, neither does the shame. Then there's the attacker. Their motto, "The best defense is a good offense." They deflect criticism by finding someone else to blame. "Oh, my report had errors? Well, Mark's report was late." Or worse, "You're only saying that because you're a micromanager." The attacker's fire isn't strength, it's a distraction from powerlessness. They've learned that anger feels safer than vulnerability, that if they hit first, they can't be hurt. But anger, no matter how loud, is just armor made of noise. Next comes the justifier. This one might look calm, reasonable, even self-aware. But inside, they're drowning. They don't deny the mistake, they bury it under explanations. "Yes, I missed the deadline, but I was juggling 3 projects. My kid was sick, the software crashed." It's not lying, it's pleading. The justifier isn't trying to deceive. They're trying to be understood. What they really want to say is, "Please don't see me as lazy or incompetent. Please don't take away my worth." They trade honesty for approval until they're exhausted from proving what was never in question, that they're trying. And finally, the victim. The softest armor of all. "Why is everyone always picking on me? I can never do anything right." The victim takes every piece of feedback as another confirmation that the world is unfair. They turn pain into proof. "See, this always happens to me." But beneath the helplessness lies something deeply human, a longing to be seen, to be comforted, to finally feel safe. The victim learned early that taking responsibility led to punishment, not growth. So now, they protect themselves by surrendering before the fight begins. 4 faces, 4 strategies, all doing the same thing, trying to avoid the unbearable sting of shame. And maybe you've seen all 4 in yourself. One when you argue with your partner, another when your boss gives feedback, another when a friend calls you out. That's okay. These aren't flaws, they're survival strategies. Each one was built to keep you safe when you didn't know another way. But safety and growth rarely live in the same room. The denier hides from reality. The attacker fights it. The justifier explains it away. The victim surrenders to it. None of them allow you to face it. So before we talk about how to change, pause for a moment. Think of the last time someone criticized you. What mask did you wear? What were you really protecting? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. Because defensiveness isn't the problem, it's the signal. The armor isn't the enemy, it's the messenger. It's trying to say, something inside me still feels unsafe. And if you can learn to listen to that message, instead of fighting it, you can finally begin to lower the armor and see what's been hiding underneath it all along. To understand why criticism hurts so much, you have to go deeper than the moment itself. Because the moment isn't really about now. It's a mirror reflecting something far older, far more fragile, that lives underneath your skin. This is the psychology of defensiveness. And it begins with the first root, the fragile ego. Most of us grow up believing our worth is measured by what we do. Grades, praise, achievement, approval. Somewhere along the way, we stop hearing, "You did something good," and start hearing, "You are good." Too peer. At first, it feels rewarding. It gives us direction, a sense of pride. But then, one day, someone says, "You made a mistake," and suddenly, the entire house of cards shakes. Because when your identity is built on performance, failure isn't just a mistake, it's an identity crisis. The ego whispers, "If I was smart, I wouldn't have messed up. If I was good enough, this wouldn't have happened." A fragile ego can't separate doing from being. It doesn't hear, "You made an error." It hears, "You are an error." So it defends itself. It denies, attacks, justifies, collapses, anything to keep that identity intact. But here's the paradox. The more you defend your ego, the more fragile it becomes. Because every act of defense reinforces the belief that you can't survive being wrong. And that's not strength. That's fear disguised as self-preservation. Perfectionism grows from this same soil. Perfectionists aren't chasing excellence, they're running from exposure. They live with a quiet terror. If people really saw my flaws, they'd realize I'm not who they think I am. That's not ambition. It's anxiety wearing a mask of competence. When you're terrified of being found out, every correction feels like a crack in the facade. Every critique feels like a spotlight exposing your worst fear. I'm a fraud. This is why criticism hurts more for those who care deeply, because their identity is wrapped around doing things right. But the fragile ego didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built carefully, painfully in childhood. Imagine this. You're 7 years old. You spill your milk. Your parent sighs, "Why are you so clumsy?" You bring home a B+, and they say, "Why wasn't it an A?" You don't have the brain to process context, so you learn a brutal rule. Mistakes equals disapproval, and disapproval equals withdrawal of love. That's the origin of the ghost of shame. Years later, when your boss says you made an error, your body doesn't react to the words, it reacts to the memory. Your heart races, your chest burns, not because your job is at risk, but because your nervous system thinks love is. You're not overreacting, you're reliving. That rush of defensiveness is your brain screaming, "We're in danger." It's your amygdala, the ancient alarm system, hijacking your logic, flooding you with fight or flight energy. And in that moment, you're not a 35-year-old professional. You're a child again, trying to earn safety through perfection. This is why some people describe criticism as a physical wound. For those with rejection-sensitive dysphoria, RSD, a hypersensitivity to perceived rejection, the pain is almost unbearable. It's not embarrassment, it's devastation. Because to the body, rejection feels like death. And so, we build the armor. We become experts at explaining, defending, overperforming, anything to avoid that old, familiar shame. But the truth is, shame isn't a signal that you're bad. It's a signal that you once felt unloved when you needed love most. And defensiveness is just the grown-up version of a child saying, "Please don't hurt me again." The third route is quieter, more subtle but just as powerful. Psychologist Carol Dweck calls it the fixed mindset, the belief that your abilities, intelligence, and worth are fixed traits. You either have them or you don't. When you live with this mindset, life becomes a never-ending exam. Every project, every conversation, every relationship is a test of how enough you are. Praise feels like proof. Criticism feels like a verdict. And when you hear that verdict, you don't just lose confidence, you lose identity. Because if your worth is fixed, then every failure feels final. But there's another way, the growth mindset. It sees abilities as muscles, things that can be strengthened through effort and feedback. For someone with a growth mindset, criticism isn't an attack, it's information, it's data, it's a map. They still feel the sting, they're still human, but they don't confuse the sting with a scar. They understand, this is feedback about what I did, not who I am. Imagine what would change if you could believe that. Imagine hearing, "You made a mistake," and feeling curiosity instead of shame. Imagine seeing feedback as an invitation to evolve, not a declaration of failure. The fixed mindset builds a fortress. The growth mindset plants a garden. One locks you in, the other lets you grow roots. So, when you feel that surge of defensiveness, the rush of heat, the tightening in your chest, pause. Don't shame yourself for reacting. Instead, ask quietly, what is this reaction protecting? Because the armor always has a story. And that story always began with a moment you felt unsafe. You're not broken for defending yourself. You're just human trying to keep an old wound from being reopened. But the only way to heal that wound is to stop fighting every hand that reaches toward it. The goal isn't to eliminate defensiveness. It's to understand it. To see it not as resistance, but as a request. A request from the part of you that still believes love must be earned. A part that's waiting patiently for you to tell it the truth. You're safe now. You don't have to fight anymore. Healing defensiveness isn't about becoming tougher. It's about becoming safer inside your own mind. Because defensiveness isn't a flaw you need to kill. It's a pattern you need to rewire. And like any old wiring, it sparks fast before you even notice. So what you need isn't more control. You need a pause, a plan, and a little compassion for the part of you that's still afraid. Technique 1. The pause and the label. When criticism lands, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires within seconds. Your chest tightens, your thoughts blur, and your body prepares to defend. That's your alarm, not your truth. You have a 6-second window before logic shuts down. In those 6 seconds, don't talk, don't explain, don't type "but" in an email. Just pause. Take one slow breath. Feel the air move through your chest. That single act tells your body, "I'm not in danger." Then, quietly name what's happening. I'm feeling defensive. I'm feeling ashamed. I'm feeling attacked. Labeling your emotion moves activity from your limbic system to your prefrontal cortex, from reaction to reflection. In that moment, you're no longer inside the storm. You're observing it. You've just taken the steering wheel back. And even if you still feel shaky, remember that's okay. Your body's been trying to protect you for decades. It's just going to take time to teach it a new way. Technique 2. Become the data miner. When someone criticizes you, your ego wants to argue. Your inner child wants to cry. But your wiser self can do something else. Become a scientist. Instead of defending, investigate. Ask yourself, what's the 1% truth here that could help me grow? Even in the most unfair, blunt, or clumsy feedback, there's usually a tiny kernel of truth, something real you can use. To find it, stop asking why. Why is a fight. Ask what and how. What part specifically needs improvement? How could I make it clearer next time? You'll be amazed how quickly tension fades when curiosity replaces fear. Because curiosity is a form of safety. You're telling your brain, I'm not under attack, I'm learning. And learning is how you heal the fear of being wrong. Technique 3. Depersonalize the feedback. Not all criticism is kind. Some people deliver truth with rough hands. But here's the secret. A rude person can still tell you something useful. A kind person can still be wrong. So before reacting, separate the delivery from the data. Picture yourself holding a muddy gem. Your job isn't to throw it away, it's to rinse off the dirt and see what's underneath. Forget who said it, forget how they said it, look only at what's true. This mental filter turns emotional chaos into clarity. It transforms "they're judging me" into "there's something here I can use." You can't control how others speak, but you can control how much of it you let live inside you. Technique 4. Build your ego evidence. A fragile ego breaks easily because it has no internal foundation. It relies entirely on outside approval to stay upright. So tonight, yes, tonight I want you to start something. Open a blank document or notebook and title it Ego Evidence. Write down every single thing you're proud of. Moments when you showed courage, skills you learned, times you handled something hard and didn't give up. This isn't bragging, this is balance. Because when the next wave of criticism hits, that list becomes your anchor. It reminds you that feedback isn't the full story of who you are, it's just one data point. You can look at your list and say, yes, I made a mistake, but I'm also capable, persistent, and learning. That's how you build an ego that bends but doesn't break. Technique 5. Reparent your inner critic. This one goes deeper. Every time you catch yourself spiraling, I'm so stupid, I should have known better, stop. Take a breath. Then, speak to yourself the way you wish an adult had spoken to you when you were little. Not with logic. With kindness. Say, it's okay, you made a mistake, you're still worthy. That's not weakness, that's rewiring. Because the voice you use with yourself becomes the atmosphere you live in. And healing defensiveness starts with creating an inner world where mistakes don't equal danger, they equal learning. Each of these steps takes practice. At first, you'll still feel the rush, the heat, the shame, but each time you pause, label, question, and stay curious, you carve a new neural path. You're teaching your brain that feedback isn't fatal. You're showing your younger self that safety isn't perfection, it's compassion. You don't have to earn worthiness anymore. You just have to remember it. So, next time someone points out an error, pause, breathe, listen, not to the voice of fear, but to the voice that finally knows, I can handle this. Defensiveness was never weakness, it was protection. A reflex your mind built long ago, back when being wrong didn't just mean you made a mistake, but you might lose love. You learned to build walls. You learned to fight, to justify, to disappear. Because somewhere deep down, your nervous system decided that perfection equals safety. But the truth is, safety was never supposed to depend on perfection. Safety was supposed to come from love. And now, you get to give that love back to yourself. When you start to pause before defending, when you start to breathe through that shame instead of running from it, you're not just changing a habit. You're rewriting your story. You're telling that younger version of you, the one who used to panic at every mistake, that they are safe now, that they can put down the armor, that they can rest. Because growth doesn't come from never being wrong. It comes from knowing you can survive being wrong and still be worthy. You will still feel the sting sometimes, that little wave of heat in your chest when someone points out a flaw. But next time, instead of fighting it, try whispering to yourself, "This is not danger, this is data." And just like that, the armor begins to loosen. Over time, you'll notice something beautiful. Without all that metal around your heart, you can actually hear more clearly. You can learn faster, connect deeper, love harder. Because defensiveness was never just blocking pain. It was also blocking connection. And the moment you stop fighting to be perfect, you make space for something much more powerful: authenticity. So, take a moment, breathe. Think about the last time you felt defensive. Which mask did you wear: the denier, the attacker, the justifier, or the victim? And what were you really trying to protect? Leave a comment below. Not to confess, but to connect. Because you're not alone in this. We've all worn the armor. But the bravest thing you'll ever do is to take it off, piece by piece, and realize that what's underneath was never something to hide.